what really appealed to me was just telling the story as it happened, involving these several executions that I witnessed in mainly Alabama, but also in Terre Haute, Indiana, and in Mississippi. And there are really hard, difficult things. And forgiveness and mercy are two of these things that are in the culture.
I experienced their pain, personally. It was no longer, statistics of, 1,500,000 people displaced, but I could see, and feel the pain of those in the camp, and especially of Jennifer. Yeah.
Do try to present the best arguments on all or both sides, so that Christians, once they form their opinion, it's not up to us to form it for them, but to make sure that they have the right framework and the facts.
To a reporter, somebody like Ainsley, who just has such vivid descriptions and memory, talks in dialogue, and kind of had already mapped in her mind this sort of minute-by-minute tick-tock of what happened, it was just such a gift. So I knew within minutes of being on the phone with her that she was going to be her own story.
And because my mom died, the thing that I was planning on writing, I just couldn't write anymore for a host of reasons. And so I wound up doing this instead. It became part of the grieving process was to write that.
Because one of my primary motivations from the very beginning was to restore some three-dimensional life to some of these people so that they weren't just a number 53. The 53 people who died, 53 migrants, the worst immigration disaster, 53, the Quintana 53. These were all terms that were being kind of thrown around. And I thought, well, but these aren't just 53 people. Like, each one of these people has an infinite network of people who love them. And, I really wanted to restore some kind of humanity to them through this process.
And they were, really extraordinary photographs of, gang members in the Bronx who were, suffering from chronic health conditions because of gunshot wounds, or photos of drug addicts. It became clear he had a whole life outside of his medical practice that was incredibly unusual. And the more I got to know about Greg's life and how what had happened with his son Cameron many decades ago was connected to the very extraordinary way he lived now, the more I started to think it would be crazy not to write about him.
As I learned more about Mukwege, I became fascinated with just what keeps a man who's at the end of his career and has had a lot of accomplishments in his life, every day showing up at a hospital where most of the patients are victims of rape. I think that it's a very hard piece to read. It was a very hard piece to write. And I was really conscious of that as I was moving through it, that I'm telling people things that are uncomfortable.
Got religious minorities or converts like Artemis and a group of Iranians who face serious persecution if they are returned.
What happened was I saw that this woman, Artemis, had been posting on social media from a hotel in which she was being held at in Panama, really describing her journey and what happened to them and begging the world for attention.
We knew that it would be very compelling if we were able to speak with her.
Because there are amazing reporters, better than I am, who could have reported this, but not all of them are the daughter of this person who is in the scene, and kind of a daughter of the scene, right? So I was not only curious about understanding my father as a matter of sort of lineage and inheritance, but also just understanding this group of people, this village that kind of I'm indebted to and grew up with.
So I joke, although I guess I'm not really joking, that I was born into the embers of a dying industry.
A print is going through its long march to the end, I fear.
Pressure that journalism faces is competition for attention. And some of that competition is like malign in nature. So that's like, AI fake news or social media outrage or whatever.
Even if the financial model were not obviously broken, which it is, the attention span of the potential audience is severely reduced.
I think one of the pressures that's always existed is just responding really quickly to the moment.
I really worry about, as we see the decimation of local journalism and local newsrooms.
Seeing newspapers like the Washington Post lay off hundreds of reporters, close their foreign bureaus, even at times when there's conflicts in Ukraine and Russia and the Middle East and Iran.
Comes from like a deep personal place, and so I've always found it hard to really split up my profession from who I am and what I feel like I'm doing in the world.
Work that I've done, I've always had to get grants from nonprofit journalism outfits to support the work. Otherwise, it would be impossible.
Journalism is expensive, and really good journalism, deep, investigative, long form, the sort of stories that you're honoring are stories that take big investments.
A lack of trust in institutions, and some of that has been earned from the things that we choose not to cover, or the way we choose to cover certain things.
But I think there has always been concern of, print is dying, nobody wants to read magazines, blah, blah, blah.
And sometimes you hope that difference moves the needle in terms of policymaking. And it makes people, but that doesn't necessarily always happen, right?
The tendency that we're seeing of news organizations to be bought out by corporations and management that moves in that knows nothing about the news business and doesn't value the time and the energy and the sacrifice that goes into creating this kind of story. And you can't do it on your own.
Work is too hard and too isolating to do without the kind of support and financial remuneration that makes it possible. I can't do it as a starving artist.
What gives me a sense of hope about the industry is readers. And it's just that my experience as a writer is that there's a lot of readers. This audience of people who want and value and can recognize really good work is actually a very large audience.
Great journalism still has impact, right? And also, I just love hearing from readers.
That we have a real kind of civic duty on our hands right now with what's going on in the world to keep people informed and to put all kinds of information arguments before them.
Yeah, well, as a former football player, I do believe you don't step on the field unless you're ready to get hit. I mean, that's just kind of what comes with it.
So you're starting to see some of these local news organizations sprout up. And I think that just speaks to the fact that there's still a lot of desire from local readers for journalism.
It is to be tellers of truth, right? And to expose injustices, to hold power to account, to borrow a cliche, to, empower the powerless, right? That's really what I have seen the purpose of journalism. I've been in this industry for almost 20 years now, and it's the reason I got in, it's the reason I remain.
People still want to read good stories and they want to be immersed in worlds. So I don't know, I'm generally hopeful.
I think a huge thing with art is actually empathy. By looking at something that is created by another pure person, another intellect, you're sort of able to enter into that intellect, or into that mind, that these things are the product of human intent. Creativity, genius, failure sometimes, is just, I think it's a really important sort of notion to meditate on.
Things have gotten much, 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 much worse. And yet, in spite of that, it is worth doing. It is worthwhile to help people see and recognize and deal with the truth.
I didn't know that I would still be doing reporting on site in Africa at this age, but I found it incredibly energizing, hopeful to be in a country that is bursting with young people, bursting with entrepreneurs, bursting with committed people who are working day and night.
I'm Justin Giboney. I am the president of the AND campaign. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to address, say, well, if we can at least agree on this biblical framework, maybe we can find common ground and find ways to bring each other together.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Bruenig, and I'm a staff writer at The Atlantic. One thing that I guess I struggle with at times, being a sort of openly religious writer in a secular magazine, in a secular sphere, in a quite secular industry, is that the stuff I write will sort of register with people as automatically immature or silly or naive because it has, I'm upfront about my religious beliefs and how they're built in. So it's great to hear that there are people with whom it landed.
Emmanuel Nwachukwu. I'm from Nigeria, and I'm a writer. Now I primarily write for Christianity Today, freelance. Part of it was for me to not just depict the tragedy that this people or this woman is going through, but also for those living in Western countries in the US who are reading the story, to see a sense of gratitude, not gratitude at which I'm better than the other people, but gratitude for the privileges that God has given them.
My name is John Woodrow Cox, and I'm a narrative enterprise reporter at the Washington Post. So that I'm building this chronology, but really what I'm doing is just training her, my subject, to think in the way that I want her to think, and that is in detailed description. What I'll tell people is, I want to feel like I was there with you. So if you were trying to take me in the room and I could convey it on the page as if I was there, describe it in those terms. So what it smelled like, what it sounded like, what other people were saying, where they were, where you were.
My name is Sean Rubin, and I'm an author and illustrator. If something is actually based in personal experience, or it's based on observation, something that a human actually thought, felt, that happened to them, someone they knew, it's incredibly powerful.
I'm Elliott Woods. I'm a freelance magazine writer, photographer, podcaster, multimedia producer. I do it all. I was not going to bring back their loved one. I couldn't help them get a visa. I wasn't there to bring them money. I wasn't there to get them entrance into some school that could help their children. There's nothing I could do like that. All I could do was give them the opportunity to tell their story. And so that's what I told them. And that's how I convinced myself that it was the right thing to do and that I was a person to do it.
My name is Josh Rothman, and I'm a staff writer at the New Yorker magazine. But all the inspiration, all the good news, all the positivity is at the bottom. It's never at the top. I think this structural issue of representation is pretty profound. Just try to remember the people I've been able to meet who are trying to make things better, there are numberless people like that.
Mindy Belz, and I'm a writer, journalist, sometime editor, working mostly freelance right now. Be able to step into a life, step into someone's kitchen, have them make you a meal, eat food you've never dreamed of tasting before, things over and over and over again. You see how, it sounds like a cliche, but you see how our humanity binds us together. They remind me that it's a big, beautiful world, and that we will not, no matter how many days we have, we will not tap even just more than a piece of it.
I'm Nancy Walecki, and I'm an associate editor at The Atlantic. As a writer and a Christian, I'm not always bringing my faith into the mix, but it does inform everything that I do in my life, hopefully, and in my work. And so it's nice when kind of when your profession, vocation, and what really kind of drives you as a person can coincide.
Yeah, my name is Hamed Aleaziz. I cover the Department of Homeland Security and Immigration Policy for the New York Times. Those are really the most thrilling moments as a journalist, to be able to try to seek out a story and then really quickly, be able to get to the heart of it and get to talk to the person and quickly write afterward. Those are the most exciting moments.
I'm Farnaz Fassihi. I'm a reporter for the New York Times. I cover the United Nations, and I also write and report on Iran. The thing that always moves me and inspires me to do the work that I do is to make stories relatable, to put a human face on every story, whether it's, you know, a refugee in Syria, or whether it's you know, a bride in Iraq, or an activist in Iran, sort of making people who are far removed geographically from that story relate to them on the human side. Because I think when you have, only then can you really create real empathy and maybe hope that you know, you're making a difference.